Welcome back, class. This is our final lecture on Greek civilization, and it's been 5 lectures now. And so we're going to wrap up Greece here today, and then tomorrow is a video, or the next session is a video on the Peloponnesian War that I would like you to watch. Today in this PowerPoint, we're going to be looking at Greek drama. And you may have heard about Greek plays, the dramas, the tragedies and comedies. We'll talk about tragedies today. We're not going to talk about the comedies. We're going to talk about Greek drama, and then we're going to be talking about some of the playwrights. There's 2 playwrights that we need to talk about because they're pretty famous. And then we're going to move into philosophy. We can't leave Greece without first talking about the Greek philosophy that has come all the way down to today. If you have studied philosophy in my bachelor's program that I took when I received my bachelor's degree, I had to take Introduction to Philosophy, and that was enough for me. But we will be talking about philosophy today, and nothing deep, just some ideas that the 3 main philosophers had. You probably know their names very well. We have Socrates, we have Plato, we have Aristotle. And so we'll be looking at just briefly at each one of those to kind of get their ideas or what their thought process was. So other than that, stay tuned for the PowerPoint here just in a second. Okay, students, we are going to have our final PowerPoint here for ancient Greece. The next video will be a video on the Peloponnesian War, and then we're going to move into our next civilization, which is going to be Rome after that. So this will be our last PowerPoint session, so session 5 for ancient Greece. Just to continue culture from our last PowerPoint, we need to talk about Greek plays. These obviously are very famous and well known. The beginning of the drama and tragedy and comedy. This is where it kind of began. So we're going to talk about the Greek plays. So let's talk about drama. There is the tragic drama, which actually evolved from public presentations of cultic rituals. So basically the population was involved in cultic rituals, sometimes with dealing with the gods, and they would be doing these rituals. Well, it evolved out of that and basically became merged with literature of the writers of the time. And so these rituals and the literature came together. Basically, it developed to where actors began acting out the stories in the Greek plays. Now, there were thousands of plays written. You can just imagine this was the big thing to do for entertainment, and so many people wrote plays. But really only a few survived. Of the surviving plays, only 32 tragedies survived, and there's several dozen comedies that survived. So the great tragedy writers of the 5th century. So we have a couple of names here, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. The middle name you may have heard of, Sophocles. You may have heard of that one. That's a guy who wrote a pretty famous play, which we're going to talk about here in a second. We're going to look at the first 2, Aeschylus and Sophocles. Okay, so Aeschylus, he's known as the father of tragedy. 90 plays were written. Over 45 of these won awards at Athenian festivals. And his plays are actually still performed today. 2 interesting things that he developed was he developed the echeclema. This is a round, wheeled stage platform to turn the platform to the next scene. So that's pretty interesting for scene changes. Basically, they would just turn the platform. So that's called the echeclema. And the next thing he developed was called the macane. The macane was a machine that would lift actors from the stage. It's kind of like a crane type apparatus that would lift actors off the stage. And he was also known for his actors being in extravagant costumes. Next one is Sophocles. He introduced painted backdrops for scenery. So this would be put up behind the actors to give a different scene imagery behind them. And he also introduced more actors. Actually, the beginning plays only had 2 actors, and they would just wear different masks. But Sophocles introduced some more actors. His famous play in 429 BC, Oedipus Rex. Rex is Latin for king. So Oedipus is the king, and it's regarded as the masterpiece of Greek drama. The plot of Oedipus Rex, Oedipus has become the king of Thebes while unwittingly fulfilling a prophecy that he would kill his father, Laius, and now is obviously the previous king. His father was, he kills him. And then he marries his mother, Jocasta, and Oedipus took her as his queen after solving the riddle of the Sphinx. So that's basically a quick synopsis of the plot of Oedipus Rex. Okay, so let's talk about the different kinds of plays. We're going to talk about the dramas, the tragedies, tragic dramas. 3 questions that these tragedies dealt with. The storylines would go along these questions. What could humans act as responsible agents of society? So what could they do as responsible agents of society? I'm not sure why that says extant. That word shouldn't be in there. Number 2, what was the proper role of humans when they reached, another typo, reached limits that gods or other humans put on them? And number 3, how could humans proceed when gods or other humans gave conflicting demands? So these were the things that they wrestled with and the things that challenged them as they outlined in their stories that became the plays. Some themes, they were almost always mythological, so dealing with the gods and issues that the gods or goddesses gave to the people, interacted with the people. Very few actors played in the plays, but they would play multiple roles. All actors were males, and they would wear a woman's mask if playing a female. And they would have music. They would have 12 to 15 singers that would provide chorus music. And here's a couple pictures. We obviously see a amphitheater where they would have the plays, and a lot of people could sit there and listen to them. And then there's a couple of masks. The bottom ones are made out of bronze. I'm not sure what the other one's made out of, but these are some masks that they would put in front of their faces to change character. And that's all we're going to deal with the plays, just dealing with the tragedies. And our final area that we're going to look at in this PowerPoint and in Greece itself is philosophy. We do have to talk about Greek philosophy because modern day philosophy is rooted in it. We're going to talk about the three big names. Okay, so the first one here, you see him on the screen, is Socrates. Socrates was born in 470 BC in Athens. We know of his life through his students' writings, and that would be Plato and Xenophon. Definitely, you probably heard of the word Plato, that he was a student of Socrates. He developed a Socratic method, which would lay the groundwork for a Western system of logic and philosophy. So again, we're rooted in this because of the Socratic method. One of the points that he would bring up would be points against politics, because he did not like politics. He did not like how the government was going. And so he would confront the political scene in a philosophical way. And one of the terms that he coined was called the gadfly. And this is a term to confront the political scene, which Socrates said was a dim-witted horse. And you would confront this political scene with philosophy. Well, the phrase would be that the gadfly needed to sting the steed. So confronting the political scene with philosophy was the gadfly. And he wanted philosophy to improve society. He tried to establish a human ethical system based on reason instead of religion. So people would want to live in a nice place and a fair place, an ethical place, and they would they would develop their ethical systems mainly from religion to keep the gods happy. You had to do this or that. But Socrates kind of left that and said what we need is an ethical system based on reasoning instead of religion, because if it's false gods, it wouldn't have anything to do with an ethical standard. So he said we could get to it through reason. He said that human choice was the motivation, was motivated by desire for happiness. Makes sense. If people want to be happy, they have a choice, and so they were motivated by their choices to have some kind of a happy outcome. One of the things that he said was that ultimate wisdom comes from knowing yourself. The greater the person's ability to reason, the more happy they will be. So if you can reason and make good choices and you're motivated by these choices, and you can weigh the good and the bad and reason it out, then you will have more happiness than those that can't. And then he believed that you could transfer this idea into the political realm for betterment of government and society. But unfortunately for Socrates, the political climate changed, and actually changed against him, and he was punished for what he was doing. And that's a very famous painting, but he was punished by having to drink hemlock, like a hemlock drink or tea, and hemlock is poisonous. And he died in 399 BC, and this is a painting of him philosophizing on his deathbed. So that's a very famous painting, actually. Not sure who painted it, not important, but you can see him still talking, speaking, giving wisdom, people right there at his side still learning, and even the one that's giving him the drink to drink is got his head turned away. And Socrates is about to take the chalice and drink the hemlock, which would kill him. So that's it for Socrates. Next one is Plato. So we have Socrates, Plato. Okay. If you want to see that picture, there's a picture of him, some bust that gives us an idea of him with his curly beard. And these statues, they never had eyes. They never had any definition of their eyeballs. So Plato was born at 428 BC in Athens. He was a student of Socrates, and Plato started a philosophical school called the Academy, and he taught there for 40 years. He was the founder of philosophical dualism, and this is very important. And so this would be taught at the Academy. Philosophical dualism. He said that man has an immaterial soul imprisoned temporarily in the physical body. Human fulfillment is upon liberation from the physical body. So if you want complete fulfillment, then you need to escape from the physical body, and that we'll see how that happens. Happiness only comes through enlightenment, and physical pleasures and happiness are distractions to true enlightenment. So he would say true happiness would be separate from physical pleasures and physical happiness, which he would say are just distractions. And so you have to get rid of these distractions to be able to experience this enlightenment. Souls are naturally immortal and existed before the body, and which is kind of an interesting idea it's a false idea, but an interesting idea. He says souls are naturally immortal and existed before the body, and then it was placed in the body when the body was conceived, and that's actually a belief in Mormonism. Today, Mormons believe that the spirits of people are in a, I guess, like a spiritual nursery, if you will, and they're waiting there for the human body to be conceived, and then they believe that Elohim places the spirit into the body when it's conceived. That's a Mormon belief. Well, you rewind all the way back to Plato's time, and Plato said pretty much the exact same thing. So Plato continuing here with souls immortal. Souls were the essence of the person's personality. So that's what he said the soul was the personality of the person. He endorsed reincarnation, where the soul would go through cycles of embodiment and release until perfect enlightenment was reached. Religiously, gods were impersonal, and so he rooted in ethics, justice, self-control, courage, wisdom. So that is Plato. And the final one we're talking about, you know him, Aristotle. Again, another picture there of his curly beard and not much definition to his eyes. Aristotle was born in 384 BC in Stagira, Greece. He was Plato's pupil, so we have Socrates taught Plato, and Plato taught Aristotle. Aristotle became tutor to Alexander the Great, and he founded his own school of philosophy called the Lyceum. You see there on the screen his famous line. I'm sure you have heard that line before. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And obviously you can compare that with Proverbs 9:10, which talks about the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. So clearly you see that they take out anything to do with the true God. And Proverbs was written obviously before Aristotle came around. Proverbs written by Solomon. And he said that happiness is the goal of life. He founded the logical theory. Use reasoning to prove your theories. So if you have an idea and you can reason it out to where you can prove it true, then you are using your logical theory through your reason. He used what he called the golden mean, and that was basically to avoid extremes, do everything in moderation. And we're talking about, with philosophy. I'm not talking specifically about moderation of food, so you're not a glutton. But it's kind of like when I was thinking about it, it's kind of like the story of Goldilocks and the three bears. One porridge was too hot, one porridge was too cold, but there was porridge that was just right. And that's kind of like what the golden mean talked about. So for an example, there on the screen, you think of the word courage, or somebody having courage. Well, if you have too much courage, you're reckless. If you have a little courage, you're a coward. But if you have in the middle, you're courageous, then you have true courage. So that was kind of like the idea of what he meant by the golden mean. So in regards to Aristotle's ethics, he living a rational life means you live a moral life. So he's kind of bringing those two together, that if you are living in reality and you are making rational decisions, good life decisions, then that means you're moral. Morality is a choice and comes from one's thinking. Okay, so that can lead to some issues, because some people or groups can make choices based on poor thinking or bad thinking or immoral thinking, and act on it. So he's saying basically morality is a choice and comes from one's thinking. And then he said, for good ethics, live by that golden mean, not to the extremes. And here's a picture by Raphael. He painted this in 1511 AD. Actually began in 1509 and finished it in 1511 by Raphael. And this is obviously the Renaissance time that the painting took place, but it's a painting of the school of Athens. And so you can see, there in the middle, one of the philosophers walking and talking, and people following and just listening to them, and other people discussing around talking. So you can see on the screen there, see my cursor there, you have this guy here teaching down here. There's someone over here teaching on looks like a little slate there. Looks like over here there, I don't know, some kind of an argument going on. Here's some people reading. So this painting here is the school of Athens, and we have come to the end of our PowerPoint. Okay, class, that's it for ancient Greece. We spent some time here in Greece. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a lot. This is one of the main civilizations that we'll be talking about here in World History 1. And the next civilization, which we'll be getting into, is Rome. So that's obviously another big civilization that we'll be talking about, with a good number of lectures on Rome. So I hope you did enjoy this look and study of ancient Greece. I did want to just make a note that your papers, everyone has put your paper into me. It'll just take me a little while to read them and correct them and grade them and all that good stuff. So just please be patient with me as I go through the papers. If I do mark up the papers a lot in regards to grammar and word usage and word order and those kind of things that maybe Grammarly did not pick up on or weren't corrected, this is not an English class or a class on grammar. It's on history, but I do want you to improve your writing. So if I do make a lot of corrections, that doesn't mean you get a bad grade. It's just that I want you to improve your writing and learn about how to write college level papers. So, and also the grammar part of the paper, using the rubric that we use for the grading of papers, is just the grammar part is just a very small part of the grade. So don't worry too much about the grammar or some structural issues with the paper. I'll make corrections, but that's not going to destroy your grade or anything like that. So don't worry about that. I've had a couple of emails to me about Grammarly not picking up the right things, or about corrections that might throw some of the formatting off because of parentheses and periods and all that stuff. You don't need to worry too much about any of that. Again, I just want to make sure that you guys are improving on your writing. Other than that, we are going to be finishing up here Greece. So next session for the week is session 3, and that is the video on Peloponnesian War. Go ahead and view that. I hope you enjoy that, and that'll be it. We'll just call it for Greece, and we will see you next time. Take care.